What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Welton, joined by Sergeant Welton. Glenn, how are you?
I'm really good.
Today, we're going to talk about micro moments and how tiny decisions can really alter your career and even your life. I'm thinking about so many of those times where we've seen those viral clips online, and sometimes they're great and sometimes they're terrible, and they all come down to one split decision.
And I think that's the hardest thing for people to recognize is, we have to make those split-second decisions. And that's where it's important to do the training, listen to your experienced officers, listen, because you're going to take tidbits away from everything. So when your time's up to make those split-second decisions, you're not making the wrong ones.
Yeah, and as a police officer in particular, you make thousands of small decisions every single day, and some of them might seem super insignificant in the moment, but then sometimes, you kind of get that pit in your stomach kind of feeling where somebody says like, hey, somebody's here because of this call and this interaction happened, and then in your mind it was nothing, and then all of a sudden information is being provided to you, and then you're like, they seriously turned this into something.
Yeah, and I can think of throughout my career numerous instances like that, and it's not anything wrong that I did, and every time it's been disproven. I can think of the citizens' complaints that I've had against me, and or good, the positive things that have come through, to where I think as a police officer, you're dealing with people in their worst and sometimes in their best. I've had more issues with dealing with people in their best than in their worst, because they have almost, when they're in their best, they have this level of expectation that goes beyond what you or I might necessarily think of as good or bad. They just think, oh, well, you're going to magically come in and fix my problems, when you're like, hey, there was no crime here. I'm out.
Yeah, so let's actually dive into the reality of some of these micro moments together. The first one I'm thinking of is the decision to speak or to stay silent. So let's pretend that there's a young officer and he witnesses a senior officer who's kind of bending the rules a little bit, but he doesn't want to report it. He doesn't want to say anything. He doesn't want to seem disloyal. That is, in that moment, you identify something. Your subconscious, your conscious is telling, your morals maybe is telling you like, oh, this is wrong. And then you kind of go back and forth from the left shoulder to the right of, do I say something or do I just stay quiet? And, that's a micro moment we might experience several times in a month. And over time, when you stay silent like that, then it's going to sort of normalize that unethical behavior. And that can lead to major department scandals, which we've seen over and over again. And then you're going to internalize that as personal regret.
Not only that, you're going to start picking up on those habits that officer is doing, and not all the time, but it's one of those things, and it's having a simple conversation. I tell my guys this all the time. If you see something, you don't have to come to me and say, hey, they're doing this, it's wrong, unless it's egregious, of course. But have those conversations with your partners, and the one thing that is our saving grace that people hated in the beginning, but now they're hugely successful and beneficial for, especially for law enforcement, are body cameras. Like, everything you have is audio, video recorded. Like, use that to protect yourself. But that's where I think that junior officer needs to take that time and say, hey, I remember the other day you did this. Can you explain to me why? And ask them that question, and they might have a valid reason, even though in your mind you might think it's wrong. Or if they say, well, I've always done it this way, well, then it's something. Hey, do me a favor. If you're going to do that, don't do it when I'm around. Otherwise, I have to say something.
Yeah, and I was raised to never feel inferior around or towards anybody, and I think that's come out in my personality, Clint, throughout our entire marriage. And I am very thankful to my folks for giving that level of confidence. But I know for me, in instances like that, my first reaction is to, with grace and with class, call it out immediately. That is the best advice that I have, because if not, then you're going to be lingering in those feelings. And a lot of the times, those are going to come out in a bad way later on. And I'm thinking about people that might need somebody who does a thing, and then I know somebody who can, but I'm not going to refer that person because I don't feel that their credibility aligns with me giving them as a reference, and then I don't want it to look bad on me. And so the same precedence exists here, where a lot of these instances will somehow turn around on you, whether it's because that person who had the bad judgment to begin with decides to take their dagger and aim it towards you, or because you did withhold that information. A lot of times you could be the one who gets in trouble, and then that other person might not at all.
Yeah, you don't want to get implicated for someone else's mistakes. Like, that's just, to me, it's moronic to be able to get yourself tied into that situation when there's so many different avenues on how you can approach it and be able to address it in a tactful way. But being able to, if you can't do anything about it, like, talk to somebody who can, because especially if it's a safety issue, especially if it's a rights violation, like, you need to be able to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. I uphold the Constitution every day at work. I uphold the Constitution. I uphold our policy and procedures. If someone's doing something out of those realms, like, it needs to be addressed. We need to handle it.
Let's go into another one of those micro moments with a veteran officer. And let's say that he's just super frustrated with the job, or maybe he's having a bad day. And, I'm in my BMW with my top down, and I'm driving along, and then all of a sudden he pulls me over and my dash cam is on, and I don't say a word to him until all of a sudden he gets to the side of my door and he just starts to snap at me. And I decide that, this is the third time that this has happened to me. So I'm going to take that digital footage and I'm going to post it all over my social media accounts. In that one moment, said officer had the micro moment to be able to make the choice of to not snap at me for whatever his reason was, or to just maintain a professional interaction with me as a citizen. And that one interaction could have potentially ended his career depending on what had taken place.
Your career is what pays for your livelihood, what pays for your family, what pays for your life in general. And because you had that one bad moment, is it really worth it to give it all up because of frustration or because of anger? Like, that's why it's so important, and we've talked about this so many times, is being able to control your emotions and approach things in a systematic way and do it the same way every time. If you're pissed off and you hate the world today, like, doesn't mean you have to go out and take it out on other people.
Let's go into another one of these micro moments where an officer is like super, super busy. So he decides to kind of skip out on some of the paperwork on an arrest. And he's just like, oh, it's not a big deal. And like, he's whatever is going on in his life in that moment. But he had that micro moment of to make the decision, do I follow through and then do all of this additional paperwork? Or do I just kind of leave out some of these requirements that I know are needed, but nobody's going to ever know? That was a micro moment that could dramatically change his life, because months later he can get dismissed because of a technicality.
Yeah, you put all this hard work into something initially. Like, don't let it slip through the cracks because you're feeling too lazy to spend an extra 10-15 minutes on getting your extra reports done, or trying to talk your way out of a report when a crime actually happened. You'll end up doing more work on the back end than you would have done if you would have just taken that report in the beginning.
I am so fortunate to have so many people that I know who are trying to make sure that those small micro moment lifestyle choices don't affect somebody in the long term. And let's say that there's a first responder who's constantly just skipping workouts, not moving around, eating fast food, ignoring stress management. And then years later, they develop serious health issues, or, a lot of times have, they die at a young age because of everything that led up to that. Whereas in those micro moments, when you have that free time, or that your schedule will allow for it, you could be, eating something healthier, drinking more water, moving your body more, and yet you're choosing to sit and play games, or like whatever your vice is, whatever the alternative to not doing those things are. That small, consistent desire to not want to be doing those things, it could really lead to a lot of stress on the job, but then long-term ailments too.
Yeah, you need to take care. Like, we make micro decisions every day, and whether you're on at work or you're at home, like, you're making these micro decisions that will impact someone else in the future or yourself in the future. Being able to adjust and overcome that on a regular basis is there's repercussions with everything. They could be good, they could be bad, and it's being okay with that.
Yeah, and when it comes to our relationships too, whether it's with your spouse or somebody else, there are so many ways that we make small decisions in those micro moments that can add up dramatically. I'm thinking about a micro moment where you might be invited to somebody's birthday party and you constantly just say no, so, because it's your habit to say no. But if you're in that micro moment and you allow yourself to kind of delve into the pros of investing in those relationships, then that micro moment might mean a difference between having a wife or having a friend or having a relationship with your sister or brother later on down the road.
Yeah, every micro moment that we experience in life has really impacts on not only us, but those who surround us. And it's being able to be okay with those decisions.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.